Good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing today? Welcome to Backyard Eden Live. So, today we are talking about a couple of different things. We are going to be talking about, of course, prepping because that is the sort of the topic for our every Thursday morning live, just prepping in general. But I want to thank you for those that are watching, as well as those that will come back and watch this on replay, for being here and for the continued support. It means a lot. We're still very new to live streaming, so please be patient. There can be, with live streaming, there can be some technical hiccups, and then again, there can be some uh, things missaid and any of those things. So please be patient, but I do thank you for being here. If you would, go ahead and just hit that thumbs up button. If you find anything useful or anything that you like in the show, hit that thumbs up button. And definitely, if you can share this out on social media, that would help as well. So, once again, this is our weekly discussion on prepping. So we're actually going to be talking about a couple of different things today, or a few different things. And it may seem a little bit odd, but we're going to talk first. We're going to start by talking about some sort of recent events, current events. Now, I don't really want to turn this into a news type show or anything like that, but I think it's very important to understand sort of everything that's going on in our not only our culture, but also in sort of the current events and the news. It is very beneficial. Oh, excuse me. Very beneficial to sort of know what's going on in the world. So let's go ahead and dive right in. So my family and I, we were going out to dinner last night, um, and we were going to Brahms. Definitely like Brahms. It's very, very awesome. You can get a burger, fries, and then end up getting ice cream too. So, sort of a side tangent there, but we were heading to dinner, and I was scrolling kind of through Facebook, and I noticed someone had shared an article from yahoo.com about a Florida teacher. And it kind of caught me off guard because that is one of the things that I am pursuing right now. I am in college getting my degree so that I can become a teacher. So that's pretty cool, but it piqued my interest. And what actually caught my attention about this um, article was the headline read, Florida teacher was fired for not giving a zero, or excuse me, not giving a 50% on an assignment that was not turned in. So let's think about this for a second. So a teacher was supposedly or allegedly fired. She's claiming that she was fired because she did not give a 50% on an assignment that wasn't turned in. So, just take a second, wrap your head around that, and just understand that that is sort of one of the examples, if of things that are happening today. So, yeah, I don't know how true the story is. I did go and kind of vet it out a little bit. It was on Yahoo.com, and it's also being mentioned on some other news networks as well. Um, After reading the article, the school is claiming that there is no sort of policy in place for that. No policy in place for giving students 50s for work that wasn't turned in. So it's kind of one of those stories where it's like he said, she said, or they said, she said. So it's an interesting kind of thing. But in our culture today, in our country, we're giving credit um, when no work is done. So, and that's not just this case, but just in general, we are developing a culture of essentially handing things out. I know that could touch a sore button for some, but it's very true. So I know that when I was in school, um, if I didn't turn in an assignment, I got a zero. There was no ifs, ands, buts, or anything about that. You didn't get a 50. I would have probably done a little bit better in school. My grade point average would have been a little bit better, maybe, if that would have been the case. Um, but anyways, the school claims that there's no policy in place for that, and so that is just one of the ways that, or one of the things that's going on. You know, Now, not only do people lack common sense sometimes nowadays, but now we're also giving out sort of a credit on academics. So, this is one of the reasons I kind of researched it. This is one of the reasons that the U.S. is ranked 17th overall in education, trailing countries in Asia and other parts of the world. So, yeah. Now you may ask, what does this have to do with prepping? And we'll get there. Just be patient. One of the other things that's going on, of course, is Hurricane Florence. Of course, it ripped through the East Coast and is just devastating people there. And they're dealing with the aftermath. Flooding and devastation continue in the Carolinas. They're experiencing record-breaking excuse me, they're experiencing record-breaking flooding just in the aftermath of the hurricane. It's I don't know where you are in the world or in relation to the East Coast there, but it's amazing how much rain and how much rain or damage that rain can do. Um, if you haven't really stopped to think about what that could look like in your area, take a second and stop and think about that, because I know where I'm at, we've experienced a ton of rain just because of what's going on down on the coast, as well as things of the nature that we're not in a position that they're in. We're not experiencing that kind of flooding, but it is kind of important to think about what it could look like in your area. What problems can be caused by excessive rainfall and things of that nature in your area. So I know that there are some streets here where we're at in Texas, in our town, that even just after a couple of days of just medium rainfall, excuse me, just after medium rainfall, those streets can be flooded. Whenever they put in the streets, they didn't put in proper drainage, and so that can cause some issues. So you need to stop and think kind of about your area and how that would affect you. Think about things like, what streets would you be able to use? What paths would you be able to take? What areas or what place would you go if you needed to evacuate? And so those things are very important to keep in mind. But this is just some of the things that they're going through there. I mean, they're dealing with excessive amounts of rainfall and excessive amounts of flooding because of the hurricane. But not only are they having to choose, in this situation, they had to choose whether to stay or whether to evacuate. That's a huge thing. But in addition to that, now, for a lot of those people, they are dealing with the potential loss of everything. Not only their material possessions, but a life that they could go back to, or even their lives. And so it's a very serious thing. And I want to take this second right now. Please stop and pray. Continue to keep these people and all that are affected by the Hurricane Florence, and the flooding in your thoughts and prayers. Um, so there is one other just little quick thing that I want to talk about, and this really hit me hard. It happened. It's actually a little bit older than the things that we've already mentioned, but it actually happened the first part of the month. So I believe it was September the 5th. Don't quote me on that, but I want to say it was September the 5th. And I remember exactly where I was at, because I was taking my 7-year-old daughter to the dentist, and we were sitting in the dentist office, and she was just there for like sort of a routine, kind of appointment. And we were sitting there, and I had my phone out, of course, and I was kind of scrolling through and seeing what was going on in the world. And I was, of course, on Facebook. And so I was scrolling through Facebook, and someone shared a live video of sort of a situation that was happening in New York. And so I watched the live video for a few minutes, and I was kind of interested in the situation. And so the situation was, it was a plane, and you've probably already heard a ton about it, and you may be already sick of hearing about it. But it was a plane carrying over 500 people that the plane had reported that there were a number of people on board. The number was initially, it was 100 people on board that were sick. And so, and this plane then was allowed to land at JFK, so that these people could get treatment. Um, and upon further, upon like medical attention and further, testing and all of that, they confirmed 10 passengers were having flu-like symptoms. And so, I mean, it's one thing to let the plane land when there are that many supposed cases of flu-like symptoms. I mean, it's very unorthodox in my eyes, very strange in my eyes to first off, is to have that many cases of the flu or flu-like symptoms in one location. Hey, good morning from Zero to Homestead. North Georgia checking in. Hi, how are you? So it is very weird, very odd for that many cases of flu-like symptoms to be in one place. And so it was kind of odd, kind of terrifying a little bit. And so, I can understand one person with a runny nose or, a cough. You see people walking around all the time with a little face mask on. And, that, it used to be pretty odd, but now it really isn't. And in fact, in Japan, it's actually not someone that's concerned about getting sick from someone else. It's actually a person being respectful and not wanting to get someone else sick. And so it's, it was odd at first, but now it's sort of a normal thing. And it's weird that not only did they allow the plane to land, which I understand that the people on board, I believe the plane had previously landed or stopped in Dubai. And so these people have been on a plane for a long time, totally understand it, totally understand that they needed to be evaluated by medical staff and all of that. But it certainly raises an issue. It certainly raises a concern about our practice, our protocol, if you will, about something like this happening. So, like I said, one person with a runny nose or a cough is sort of normal. Even multiple people, I guess, during certain parts of the year. But 100 people supposedly sick, that's a little bit odd. And so even in the weird part is one person is really all it would take. Now, not only did we allow them to land, which, like I said, I totally understand that, but not only did we allow them to land, but we also released the majority of the passengers. And I'm not saying hold them hostage or anything like that, but definitely want to vet that out. Um, so definitely want to vet that out and see what's going on. But we let a lot of those passengers off without thorough testing. It was just very minimal type of checkups. At least is what I'm seeing when I look at into the articles on the news. And then the other thing is, how do you go from 100 uh, suspected or 100 supposed cases to just 10? So it's kind of odd. So, it's weird. And so these, you might ask yourself, why did I choose to bring up those types of things, those particular bits and pieces of news? And I'm sorry if you're experiencing um, some technical difficulties. I apologize for that. Um, but you may be asking yourself, why did you choose to bring up this? And I brought all these up with the hope of it, kind of raising awareness of some of the things that are going on. And this is just a few. If you go onto any news platform, whether it be Fox News or CBS News or any of those, CNN, whatever those networks are, those platforms are, and you look at the things that are going on, you are, you should be alarmed. And so I'm not trying to make this into a gripe session or a news session, but you should be alarmed. And when we are alarmed, we should take action. We should take an action in the form of prepping, because we are never really sure. We're never really sure what's going to happen. We are not blessed in knowing. I believe that only the good Lord knows what will happen next on any given day. Nothing is guaranteed. The Bible would say that tomorrow is not even guaranteed. So, I it. So that's alarming to me that those things happened, and just the craziness of it. That's where our culture's at. And so, with that being said, we're going to dive into our prepping topic of the week. And I think it's one of the very basic things. I've mentioned before that I'm going to start prepping with 4 basic things. And so, if you caught last week's show, I'm starting, and I'll say it again, but I'm starting with food, water, first aid, and fire. Now, to me, those items are very basic of items. And so, as I've shared before, the fire kind of fits in because we have a wood burning fireplace, and everything else is electric. So that's sort of our heating source, our alternative heating source, if you will. So, but today is the first show that we're going to be really focusing on food storage. Now, this will probably go on for a couple of weeks in different aspects. We'll talk about all sorts of things in reference to food storage. So today we are going to look at, and I'm going to bring up the FEMA website. Let's see if I can get it over here. So let me try that again. Okay, that says it's working. Okay, that says it's working. Let's try it again. All right, so let me know in the chat. Do you see the FEMA website here? Okay, so hopefully that's working. So we're looking today, we're going to look at food storage, and this is sort of what FEMA is recommending. So this is on the FEMA website, and I'll put a link in the description below for this. But this is on the FEMA website, and this is the food and water in an emergency, basically, is what this PDF is called. And you can see here that is on the FEMA website, and also American Red Cross is listed there as well. It's there. So we're talking about one. This is a great resource for anyone that is starting out. Is just this FEMA website. If you have no idea where to start in your food storage, this website, and like I said, I'll link it in the description below. But this is a great place to start. So the FEMA website, in this PDF, it is recommending that, well, a certain amount of things to be kept on hand. So let's just look at this. It says if an earthquake, hurricane, winter storm, or other disaster strikes your community, you might not have access to food, water, and electricity for days or even weeks. Stop right there. Let's take a second and let that sink in. So food, water, and electricity for days or even weeks. Now, we've talked about this before, but just taking food, water, and electricity for granted, days, hours are tough for some, and they're tough for most everybody. But hours turns into days turns into weeks. So it says, but also right here, it says, by taking some time now to store emergency food and water supplies, you can provide for your entire family, which is very true. So, emergency food supplies. So I'm not going to go through and read all of this. Like I said, I'll put a link in the description below. But it says for emergency food supplies, it says even though it is unlikely that an emergency would cut off your food supply for 2 weeks, consider maintaining a supply that will last that long. So even though it's unlikely, they're saying it's unlikely. Now, right now in this, let's understand that the FEMA website, this PDF that's here that they've created, is really talking about natural disasters. So, like we said just a minute ago, like the little graphic said, you're looking at earthquakes, hurricanes, different winter storms, things of that nature. They're recommending, a food supply that will last, at least 2 weeks. Now, 2 weeks, I don't know about you, but our family, there are 7 people in our family. So just trying to think, if you think about it, it's 2 weeks for 7 people. That's quite a bit of food. Now, it will look different for every single person. You're looking at, or every single family, if you will. So if you're a bachelor, if you're a lady that lives on your own, if you're a person who lives on your own, that's completely different than a family of 7. Or let's hope so. I'm a large guy, but it should look different, and that's a good thing. That means less that you would have to prepare potentially and things of that sort. But they're recommending a 2 week supply just here. They're saying, you know what, it's highly unlikely, or it's unlikely that you'll be without, or that an emergency would last that long. But 2 weeks is a good place to start, is essentially what they're saying. And hopefully it doesn't last that long. So it says you may not need to go out and buy foods to prepare. Excuse me, having problems talking apparently. So it says you may not need to go out and buy foods to prepare an emergency food supply. You can use canned goods, dry mixes, and other staples in your cupboard or on your cupboard shelves. Be sure to check expiration dates and follow the practice of first in, first out. Now, I worked in a restaurant for many years. I have a little acronym, if you will, for first in, first out. We've always called it FIFO. It's literally just stands for the first letter of each there, first in, first out, FIFO. And so, like I said, we're not going to read all of this, but it goes into detail talking about how to prepare sort of an emergency food supply. And if you look down through, this, it is something very, very right here. We'll get to that in a minute. But if you're looking at storing that much food, there's obviously some things that you need to talk about with storage in itself that you'll need to look at. It says here in storage tips, it says keep food in a dry, cool spot, and even a dark area if possible. Open foods and other resealable containers carefully so you can close them tightly after each use. Wrap perishable foods such as cookies and crackers in plastic bags and keep them in sealed containers. Empty open packages of sugar, dried fruits, and nuts into screw-top jars or airtight containers. Inspect all food, for spoilage and anything like that. And so it just goes into some great information. Goes into the shelf life, some common shelf life used within 6 months. Things like powdered milk, dried fruit, dry crisp crackers, potatoes, those sort of things. And then it goes into some other things as well, how to cook with the power out. And we'll look at all of that sort of stuff, emergency water supplies, and all of that in the coming weeks. Let's see, hidden water sources. So let's get down. Let's see, where was it? Okay, so this is their disaster supplies kit. Now, this is essentially, and we're not going to cover too much else other than just what they recommend in this supply kit for food today, but this is what they're recommending in their disaster supply kit. You can see right there in the very top line, it says 3-day supply of non-perishable food and a manual can opener. And then, of course, it goes into some other things as well. 3-day supply of water, and that's a recommended amount of 1 gallon of water per person per day. We won't get really into water today, but we're going to look at food. So, FEMA is recommending a couple of different things here. They're saying in this disaster supply kit that it's recommended to have a 3-day supply of food, non-perishable food. So the first thing you got to really examine here is you got to examine, what is non-perishable food. So non-perishable food is really, I'm trying not to be dumb or crazy here, but non-perishable food is essentially food that will not go bad. Or it takes a really, really long time to go bad, if you will. So that's the first thing you got to really determine is what is a non-perishable food item. And then after that, once you kind of wrap your head around what those items are, then you got to take a look at, okay, well, how much food do I need? How much food do I need for a 3-day supply? So the easiest way to do that is you first evaluate how many people are in your family. So in our family, we'll use mine as an example. Our family is 7 people. Now, so there is some things that you have to consider when you're looking at the number of people in your house. Um, as far as FEMA on there as well, and you can go back and read this after I link it. But FEMA recommends to obviously take in consideration people with special diets and things of that nature, and that's very important. So, but also with that is taking into consideration ages and all of that as well. So in our family, we have 2 adults and 5 kids. Now, even though one of those 5 kids is a normal, like she's like the size of a normal adult. So I should really count her as an adult because she's going to eat that much. So we have 3 adults and 4 kids. In doing that, I have to plan appropriately for that. And the same thing I would say to you, if you had, say, 2 people in your house, you plan appropriately for that. If you had, 2 people or 2 adults and 2 kids, you would need to plan appropriately for that. So once you've first determined how many people are in your house, or whoever you're going to prep for, we'll put it that way. Then you need to look at, what do they eat in a day? Now, I say that because if we're talking about just a simple natural disaster, I say simple. It's not simple. That's the wrong choice of words. But I say simple in the sense that if you're looking at just something, like the power's out because of a storm, and you're out of power for 3 days, it's different than surviving for extended periods of time. You're looking at just getting through until power will be restored. So that's one thing. I hope everybody understands that. So it's obviously different for a 3-day power outage than, trying to survive for 6 months. So think about that when you're prepping your food, because, if you're prepping for, essentially an apocalypse of some sort, you're looking at surviving for extended amounts of time, then it would basically be, okay, look, my body needs this much food to work properly, this much amount of calories and this amount of protein and this amount of this in order for me to function properly, versus, a 3-day power outage or a week power outage or whatever it would be. It's not a matter of what does my body need to survive necessarily, but it's, you can have some sort of normalcy there. And I say that because, if you're fairly certain the power is going to come back on, then you don't have to ration your food. So, or, it's smart to have that in mind and to prep in mind for that. But so essentially, when you're trying to figure out how much is a 3-day supply, you first find out how many people are in your house or you're prepping for, and then you look at what they eat per day. So, for example, most people eat 3 meals a day. Just most people. Some people, whether they're on some sort of crazy fad diet, they may eat 12 meals a day because their smaller meals are better and this and that. Or you may only eat 2 meals a day, which, whatever. So, but you take whatever you would eat in one day, and then you essentially just multiply that by 3 or however many days you want to have prepped. So they're recommending 3 days. So you would take that normal meal consumption in one day and times it by 3. That's just a very basic way of doing it. Now, there may be some tools and different resources out there to get you a little bit kind of more detailed there, but it's really that essential. It's just really that easy. And so, for example, if you are someone that eats the same thing every morning, it's easy right here for you. If you eat a bowl of oatmeal every single morning, then you know that for a 3-day supply of non-perishable food that you need at least 3 bowls of oatmeal. Okay. So if you want to get super detailed about it, you can take a measuring cup and you can measure out exactly how much oatmeal you would normally eat, and you would figure out how many scoops or how much is in an oatmeal container. And then you could then take that information and you could, if you had multiple people in your house, you could times that amount of oatmeal times that many of people. That would give you essentially the recommended 3-day supply of oatmeal for your family in that disaster. So, same concept, same principle, same everything kind of applies there when you're talking about non-perishable foods. And then, so, if your family, say your family, our family of 7, say we're making mac and cheese, okay? We would make, we're sort of weird. We make 3 boxes of mac and cheese. Now, the reason we do that is we eat a very balanced meal. We always have a protein. We always have some sort of side, either mashed potatoes or mac and cheese or something. Not really, we don't ever do 2 of those in the same meal, but we always have that type of side. And then we always have a veggie or a fruit. Sometimes we eliminate the mashed potatoes and the mac and cheese, and we go with just veggie and fruit. So we always do a little bit more, and then we end up putting some of that in the fridge for one of our lunches the next day. Okay, so that's why we do 3 boxes. There's always enough left over for a lunch the next day for either myself or my wife. So when you're talking about mac and cheese, okay, I have a box of mac and cheese here. This is the Aldi brand, I believe, Cheese Club. Oh yeah. If you're not shopping at Aldi, definitely check them out. You can find some really good deals there. But for this box of mac and cheese, now this box of mac and cheese, it is the normal box of mac and cheese. It has the little packet of seasoning, and for the best flavor, if you look right here on the side, it'll have what you need to add to it. So this has butter, margarine, and milk. That's what you need to add to this. Now, obviously that probably makes it taste a little better, but this box of mac and cheese can be just made with water. You can boil them noodles, add your packet of seasoning mix, and then a little bit of water to kind of stir that in. So, if you know that your family makes 3 boxes of mac and cheese for one meal, but you can get away with 2, just depending, then you'd want to take that number and multiply it by 3 if you intend to eat mac and cheese every single day. Now, most people don't eat mac and cheese every single day. I'm sure there are some. My daughter, my 12-year-old, could definitely eat mac and cheese every single day. But that's how you kind of get that number. That's how you kind of get there. In that is you take what you would eat and you times it by 3 or however many days that you want to have prepped. So once you know how many people you have and what that person would normally eat in a day, like I said, this is going for normalcy. This is going for 3-day worst case scenario, power goes out, something like that. You're looking for normalcy. You're taking what that person would average or what that person would eat per day on average, and that's what you prepare for. So it is that simple to kind of figure it that way. That is a very base way of doing it, and there are probably a lot of resources and things that would point you in more in depth than that. So once you figure that out, then you can start sort of collecting, sort of building your food supply so that you have those things on hand. Now, the first sort of things, in my opinion, and this is not just my opinion, there are numerous resources out there that would recommend the same thing as far as where to start. Now, it's great to have these things, these sort of everyday luxuries, and yes, mac and cheese is an everyday luxury. Growing up, we ate mac and cheese, no problem, but it was not something that we just always had on hand. So, everyday luxury, that's okay. It's good to have those on hand, but it's also good to have just the very basics on hand. Now, when we're talking about food storage, there are two really basic things, in my opinion, that you should have on hand at all times. Now, some people may not like these, and you would have to take into account if you have any kiddos or anybody that doesn't like these. But there are a couple of basic things that you should, you're talking about food storage. And here is this is just a picture I found online. This is not my food storage. I found this online and I thought it looked like a decent food storage. It's obviously it's got a shelving system, and there's different foods and different paper stuff and just all of that you would need on hand there. And when you're talking about food storage, there's some sort of staples that you should have on hand. And so one of those staples, now one of the things that FEMA recommended is putting your stuff in screw top jars. Okay, so what I have here, I don't know if you can see that in the tiny picture. Let's look at it. Let me put me back on. All right, so this is a screw top jar. Now, this is plastic, okay, which, using plastic's probably not the best. Glass would probably be better, but plastic in a pinch would work. But this is essentially a pickle jar. Let me get it right there. Best made pickle jug, if you will. And these were whole pickles, and I, eventually finished the jar. I love pickles, by the way. But if you finish the jar, save it. It's got a screw top lid, and you essentially take your beans that we're looking at. You take your bags of beans here, and you empty those in here. Pretty simple, right? So those are easy to store, but not only are they easy to store, they're also good for a source of protein. So you have the dried beans that you could go do. You could also take let's see. Let me look back here. Let's go here again. You can also do canned beans. So canned beans are good as well. The reason being is obviously dried beans are great, but dried beans are something, I don't know if you've ever cooked a pot of beans before. I'm sure you have, but dried beans, they can cook for several hours. You can soak them overnight, and that helps. They take a little bit less time to cook, but there's some preparation involved. There's some time that's involved to cook them. Canned beans are more of a ready-to-eat sort of thing. I mean, there's still some cooking involved, or at least heating up. I mean, these are not pinto beans. These are pork and beans. I didn't remember which can I had, but these are pork and beans, and these are essentially ready to eat right out of the can. I've had these right out of the can before, and they're fine. And so they're, obviously, they're not a filet mignon. They're not even a ribeye. I mean, but this is a food source that's in a can that's easy to store. This is a sort of a non-perishable item that you can store for your 3-day supply or even more. And so anytime you want to store this, it's simple. You put them in your pantry and you stack them up, and it's a beautiful thing. And so when you're looking back at your food storage here, you can see that there are numerous canned goods that are stored in this food storage. Now, so our biggest question I've probably had, or I've seen people have about food storage, is how long is that good for? How long is that food item good for? Now, most items will be generous and they will tell you how long it's good for you on, or how long it's good for on the package in some way, shape, or form. So, for dried beans and things of that sort, it's really dried beans. So dried beans. You also have rice is another staple for anyone that wants to put together a food storage. Rice is simple to store as well, and it is, a very basic thing. The reason I say rice is because it can take on really any flavor that you would want to impart on it, and that will help you with variety. It is one thing to have a can of beans at each meal, but when you can have something as easy as simple as rice and add different flavors to it, that can help with the kind of the repetitiveness of the food. And so, but with that being said, when you start talking about how long is something good for, let's just go back to our can of beans here. If you look on the bottom of most cans, okay, if you look on the bottom of most cans, it's going to say a best if used by date. Now, what does that mean? The beauty of that is a best if used by date means that this item essentially does not expire. If it's kept in this can, it will be good for a really long time. Now, with that being said, if you find a can of food and the best if by date is, let's just go on a limb and say something like 1993. Okay. That's, what is that, 25 years? It's probably not going to be pleasant. It's not going to, it'll taste sort of like whatever's pictured on the can, but it's not going to be the best. It's not going to have the freshest flavor. It's not going to have the best flavor. It will still be edible, more than likely, but it's not going to have the best flavor. So with the best by date, that is saying that this can of food is going to be best flavor, best taste, best freshness, maybe. Okay, so best if used by, and this can says, you can see on the label there, it says this was bought here recently. It says best if used by, if I can hold it still, April 5th, 2020. Okay, so April 5th, 2020. So it is, what is it? September 2018. So you've got a 2-year item here, and that's just if that's best if used by. So you got 2 years to use this item to get optimal flavor, optimal freshness. I don't know that that's the right way to say that when you're talking about a canned item. But anyways, so you've got 2 years essentially on this item if it's kept in a proper storage place. And you can kind of refer back to the FEMA sort of guidelines on where to store your food. So there are some other things that you can store. I've actually got a couple other items out here, but rice and beans are really where to start. I say that because they're staples. They've been staples in people's pantries and people's houses for hundreds of years, possibly even thousands of years, have beans and things like that been consumed. So they're staples. Dried beans are great. As I showed you before, you can store these, and cost-wise, they're actually pretty affordable. I don't know if you've looked at buying dried beans, but they usually run $1 to $2 a package, depending on the type of bean. So that's pretty good. You could also try to look into a bulk resource like Sam's or Costco or somewhere like that, and potentially look into a bigger bag. Same thing with rice. So with that being said, those are sort of the staples. That's where you would want to start, are your staples. If you are looking for other items, back to our mac and cheese, if you want some items that are more of normalcy, and you look for, where did I see the date? Oh, here it is. So here's the date on this. I don't know if I can get that close enough for you to see it. If I can stop moving it. I don't know if you can make that out. All right, but it says February 1st, 2020. So this is essentially good for 2 years if stored in the proper way. Things in bags and boxes really should be put into airtight containers, but if it's stored the right way, it's good for 2 years. Everybody likes, I mentioned oatmeal earlier. Not everybody likes oatmeal. So you really got to think about, each individual person. If you're trying to keep normalcy involved, try to keep everything as normal as possible. I find that when people are feel like it's a normal situation, it does help as far as, keeping everybody calm and everybody like that. So one of the things we eat in our household on a regular basis, and I'll be looking into ways to store it a little bit better, is cereal. Now, this is not the flavor or the type of cereal that everyone eats in my house. This is the type of cereal that I eat in our house. This is Honey Bunches of Oats with almonds. Now, there are a couple of reasons for that. I like the almonds, but it's also a good source of protein. So when you're looking at this box, once again, you have a best if used by or best when used by date right there on the top. It says August 2019. Now, obviously, you don't have you don't have the same shelf life on the cereal as you do on even the mac and cheese or the canned beans, but you do have a shelf life there. So those are some things to keep in mind when you're putting together your list of food items. Not only do you need to know how many people you're prepping for and what they eat on a normal basis in order to get that 3-day supply for the very minimum that FEMA recommends, or if you're trying to prep for 2 weeks, or if you're trying to prep for 6 months. You've got to think about what are those items you're storing, how long are they good for, and how you're going to store them. So once you sort of have that in mind, then you can start, building sort of a menu, if you will. So another thing, I noticed that this was a little bit different. I'm looking at the can right now. I was looking at this because I love tuna. Okay. I believe this is another Aldi buy. Chunk light tuna in water. And if you look at this can, this is where it gets kind of weird. If you look at this can, it says best if used by August 2021. I think that's what it says. August 2021. So on this particular item, this canned protein, this canned meat, you got an extra year essentially. You got almost 3 years of best if used by, if you will. So that's kind of where we're gonna stop this first week. We've talked about what are the recommended sort of guidelines for food storage according to FEMA. And so you're looking at, what is it going to really be for your family? And that's where you got to start. So we're going to stop there. I'm going to bring this back up. This is the FEMA page again. This is a PDF that you can view and even download. I will put this link in the description below, but this has some really great information in it. So definitely check this out. It talks about sort of the recommended supply list, if you will. Also use that resource. And I have an article that wrote just here recently over on our website. That is www.backyard-eden.com. Check that out as well. It is just a simple article I put together about 10 food items that almost never go bad. So, and 2 of those are items that we talked about today, beans and rice. So definitely check that article out. And if you aren't already a subscriber, consider subscribing now. Click the little bell icon so you don't miss out on anything. And we will go live again on Tuesday night at 7 o'clock, 7 o'clock Central Standard Time. And again, of course, in 1 week. If you haven't already, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you found any of this information useful, make sure to share it with your friends on social media. And with that being said, on social media, if you are not already a member of our Facebook group, Backyard Eden and Friends, this is a good place to share about your homestead, about your garden, about what is going on in your life. And we would love to hear from you. We would love for you to be involved in that group as well. And that really is about it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the live stream. We're going to go ahead and get out of here for the day. Make sure to check back for next week. And with that being said, guys, I hope you start looking at what you can do to be a little bit better prepared. If you have any comments, questions, or even suggestions, pop those in the comment section below after this video is published, and I'll try to answer those questions for you. Thanks, guys. Have a great day, and I will see you in the next video.